Hello, welcome to the vlog. Thank you for joining me. Today is going to be a very special video because I am out in the state of Oregon and I'm going to be doing a bicycle ride along what's called the Mosier Twin Tunnels Trail. This trail is along the Columbia Gorge, which follows the Columbia River, which divides the states of Oregon and Washington. As you can see behind me, it's got some pretty dramatic geographic features. This should be a really wonderful ride. And today I have a couple special guests with me. Special guests that are also family. They are my sister, Nancy, and her husband, Tom. And we're all going to be doing this ride together. And so it should be a lot of fun. It should be just absolutely gorgeous. So let's go have an outdoor adventure. So here we are at the beginning of the Mosier Twin Tunnels Trail. It's a fairly warm day, mid to upper 80s, but the humidity is not bad at all, and it's nice and breezy. That over there, that is Washington State, correct? Okay. Those hills in the distance are Washington State. You can't quite see it, but down below is the mighty Columbia River. I am standing in the state of Oregon. The trail starts here, and we're going to be going up that way. And this trail is fairly short. It's about 4.5 miles, but it should be jam-packed with scenery. So let's have at it. This trail is inside the Columbia River Gorge, a natural cut through the Cascade Mountain Range. The gorge is about 75 miles long and 3 miles wide, with the river averaging about a mile wide. There are about 75 different waterfalls inside the gorge. Some of them are fairly small, but others are quite sizable, the largest of which is Multnomah Falls, which is seen here. The Columbia River, which carved out the gorge eons ago, separates the states of Washington and Oregon. This trail runs along a restored section of the historic Columbia River Highway, which was built between 1913 and 1922. The road was abandoned in the mid-1950s when the Interstate 84 was constructed, but has since been renovated and opened to the public. Most of it is open to vehicle traffic, but some parts, like this trail, is pedestrian only. I didn't recognize it at the time because the road grade is fairly shallow, but much of the part of the trail going out is uphill. Hence the slow forward speeds we're moving at. I didn't really recognize this until we came back and got to spend a large amount of time just sitting on the bike going downhill at a high rate of speed and not have to pedal, which is always a lot of fun. Yes. Stop on this curve too, obviously. So this is one of the scenic overviews of the trail, looking across the Columbia to the state of Washington. Interesting feature here is that the slanted inclines of the land is caused by lava flows from the various mountains in the areas over the eons. Lava would flow down, and then X many millions of years later, another lava would flow down, and then another. So these are layers of lava that have erupted from area volcanoes and fissures and things of that nature. We are looking basically east. The Columbia River is flowing toward you here. Any idea of how deep it might be? It's deep. We know that. And way off in the distance, you can see it curves around to the left, and that is still Oregon over there. This is Washington over here. And the trail is going to continue along that way. And that's my sister Nancy. So this is kind of interesting. You're still looking at the Oregon side. In fact, it's just a little canyon, just a couple 100 feet wide maybe. But you're looking at a whole bunch of rock, basalt rock, almost no soil, but it's southern exposure. So it's being broiled by the sun. So there is little to zero vegetation growing on that slope. And yet, when you look at this side of the trail, got a lot of vegetation, downright lush. The sun's exposure on the south-facing Washington side versus the north-facing Oregon side is just one of many factors affecting the level of vegetation, but it is a significant factor. And on a personal note, both Nancy and Tom were very quick to point out to me that when they go on hikes early in the spring, say February, March, the ambient temperature still being fairly chilly at that time of the year, they always choose hikes that are on the south-facing Washington side, which is much more exposed to the sun. And what that results in is a hike that is much more warmer, and the trail itself is much drier because being exposed to the sun, it dries out and warms up much faster than it does on the Oregon side. And it's not until late spring, when the ambient temperatures have come up and the spring rains have abated somewhat, that Nance and Tom will choose to go for hikes on the Oregon side, because it's only until late spring that the trails on the Oregon side will dry out and the weather will just be warm enough to make hiking in a heavily shaded Oregon side pleasant. It's a long way up there. Oh, good. Yes. So if you look very closely, you can see a number of folks on the water enjoying various water sports, kiteboarding and windsurfing. This area in and around Hood River is known as the windsurfing capital of the world because the gorge funnels the wind, whether the wind is blowing from the Pacific or from the high desert. And there's almost always a good strong breeze blowing right down the gorge. And those who enjoy the wind sports take full advantage of it. These are the twin tunnels of the Mosier Twin Tunnels Trail. The smaller tunnel in the distance is 81 feet long, and the one I'm standing in is 288 feet long, almost a whole football field in length. The framework you're looking at is interesting. Frame timbers, which are called sets, are installed 4 feet apart. Nailed to the outside of the sets are those planks, which is called lagging. And finally, crews stuffed cordwood into the space between the lagging and the tunnel wall to help prevent any further rockfall from occurring. They only had to frame up the entrances because that was the most unstable part of the tunnel. These openings, which are called adits, were carved out to provide both natural lighting and ventilation. And as you can see, they provide an awesome view as an added bonus. The Columbia Gorge is about 80 miles long, and as mentioned earlier, this trail is on the eastern side of the gorge. This view is looking west towards what you might call the middle of the gorge. You can't really see it from this view, but the gorge gets much narrower and steeper the further west you go, with the sides of the gorge reaching up over 3,500 feet in some places. As the shot pans around and we look upriver, notice how the surrounding land starts to flatten out. The gorge more or less ends on the other side of those far ridges, which is about another 15 miles or so. Beyond that, the land is flat and dry and is actually classified as high desert because very little rain falls on this side of the Cascade Mountain Range, which is the range that the gorge cuts through.